100 former enlisted pilots come to Scott and participate in this dedication ceremony.
Okay. Now, the enlisted pilots is a group in and of itself. And what does that refer to? Who are these enlisted pilots?
They were, in fact, Air Force pilots in the Army Air Corps. During World War II, the need was so severe for pilots that they asked some enlisted people to fly airplanes. And we had about 3,000 enlisted folks that became staff sergeant pilots. Now, they all became commissioned pilots later on, or separated from the service. And so the Enlisted Pilots Association, if you will, is a diminishing breed.
It began in 1912 and ended 30 years later. A little-known chapter in flying history. The part played by enlisted men, trained the same as their commissioned counterparts to fly, fight, and die in the same bombers, fighters, reconnaissance, transport, and troop carrier aircraft. In total, over those 30 years, fewer than 3,000 enlisted men of the Signal Corps, Air Service, and Army Air Corps became enlisted pilots. It may be safe to say that never in history have so few done so much with such minimal recognition. Vernon Burge was the first in 1912. William Oker, the father of blind flying, served as an enlisted pilot from 1914 to 1918. Lindbergh, first to solo the Atlantic and blaze the pages of history, was truly lucky to have two other history makers, Sergeant Pilot Ira Biffle, teach him to fly, and Master Sergeant Bill Winston help hone his skills. The predecessors of the Air Force Thunderbirds were General Chennault's Sergeant Pilot team, 3 men on a flying trapeze, made up of William McDonald, John Williamson, and Ray Clifton. Many were the colorful characters among the ranks of enlisted pilots. Ham Ace Chef Sheffield, good-natured Walter Beach, who went on to organize Beach Aircraft Corporation, Happy Jack Sheeler, Pinky Cottrell, Tailspin Chamley, and Wild Bill Beagle, to name only this one group posing with a Jenny in 1918. Through World War I, the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, and the beginning of World War II, enlisted pilots put up with doubts, inequities, and often outright discrimination to earn their wings. The training was tough, very tough, and compacted into a minimum of time. But the men met every challenge and went on to prove that they were the best in the world. And they don't think that fact should be forgotten. And were they good? Just one of many examples. The first class to graduate on March 7, 1942 was assigned to the 82nd Fighter Group, one of the first fighter groups equipped with P-38s. Even though half the class stayed in the States to instruct other pilots, the half that went to Europe and Africa accounted for 130 enemy aircraft shot down in aerial combat and produced 9 of World War II's fighter aces. These are the kinds of deeds for which enlisted pilots should be known. The kinds of deeds of which every sergeant pilot must be proud. Though some served only a limited time in enlisted status, it was their start as sergeant pilots which indelibly marked their lives. They must not be forgotten. They will not be forgotten as long as there is a desire to record the names and accomplishments of this unique and noble band of men. A memory that can be shared, a pledge to the cause that can be taken. From this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Sergeant Pilots, we too are those amongst history. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers.
When we last week were talking with the Enlisted Pilots Association that was being memorialized out at Scott Air Force Base, we went over to the club and talked with some of the people who had gathered there from all parts of the country. It was fascinating because they had some old photographs and some of the people who were in those photographs. I think you'll find it interesting, and it's take two.
The photo dates back to 1943, and the man on the right is now standing on my right, Bill Albright, who served during World War II as an enlisted pilot. Bill, tell me about that picture.
Well, that picture was made in Marble Arch, North Africa.
North Africa.
We were passing through there, and a Yank photographer spotted this strange-looking group of sergeants.
And you were one of them, right?
He questioned the fact
Yeah.
that these groupie sergeants wearing different type uniforms
Right.
were all pilots, which is impossible as far as he's concerned. So he insists he wants to take our picture. Of course, we were very irate, to say the least.
You were unhappy, first of all, that he didn't know that you were enlisted pilots.
He insulted us. He called us fakes. We were wearing wings and we were wearing sergeant straps.
No.
That made us into phonies. So he just decided that he's going to get a story from us, one way or another, being a good correspondent.
Yeah.
He ended up with, can I take your picture? We were going to do something other than that, but we decided, we'll get rid of this fella. Let him take the damn picture and we'll get out.
So you did?
So we did.
And he kind of...
he moved us to the front of that airplane.
Yeah. And he immortalized you on videotape, and we're glad that you could spend a minute with us. And you were here enjoying the enlisted men's...
I certainly am.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you.
I always
very much.
do.
Okay. Bill Albrecht. One of the founders of the Enlisted Pilots Association is here with me, Lee Arbon from Texas. Lee, you flew during World War II as an enlisted pilot, right?
Certainly did, you bet.
And you've done some research, and in fact, you've written a book.
That's right. I've written a book, and research 15 years deep goes into that book.
Really?
And that will sort of reconstruct the history of the enlisted pilots, and we're very proud of that.
They go back a long ways.
Now, they go back to 1912.
Really?
They made magnificent contributions to aviation, and I think they should be recognized for the rank that they were in when they produced those kinds of contributions for
You were
aviation.
showing me an example of one that has to do with, what, a navigation system?
Well, no, the system that the world aviation uses today to fly instruments, the instrument flying system, blind flying system so-called, was devised by former sergeant pilot, circa 1914, by the name of William Ocker. And William Ocker played with instruments that Sperry had provided for him, put together in a manner that would keep all the longitudes of the aircraft controllable by the pilot, even though he couldn't see the ground.
Don't get too technical with
All right. And it enabled him to fly through clouds without falling out of the sky, in other
Good.
words.
I like that. Now, that I can understand.
And Bill has never received the full credit for that until recently, when the Air Force dedicated its instrument flying training center at Randolph.
Okay. This is one of what you said were many contributions.
Many
to
contributions,
by
that's
the
right.
enlisted pilots.
That's
Now,
right.
you flew in World War II, and in fact, behind us is a photograph, I think, of the plane you said, one of the planes that you flew. Is that
That's right. This is my
Take
airplane.
a look at that.
Good old boomerang. A classmate of mine, Sergeant Jackson, a very dear friend of mine. Both of us were sergeant pilots. I was the co-pilot, he was the pilot on one flight, and I'd be the pilot, and he'd be the co-pilot on the next flight. That's the way we managed those in those days. There was not an officer aboard. Our crew chief and our radio operator were both sergeants. And so
Now, that plane went down.
it was shot down on Sicily in July of 1943. I was not on that particular flight, thank the Lord. It and all the crew went down. They perished.
You were here, and so now you've written a book about it, and the Smithsonian is going to publish it.
Smithsonian will publish it probably within the year.
Okay. Lee Arbon, one of the founders of the Enlisted Pilots Association.
saw their idea through to completion. Here on leave from Alaska to make sure the ceremonies are carried out properly is Sergeant Annie Proctor. Class 42H, Columbus, Mississippi, is making a presentation to the Scott enlisted people. The presentation is a newspaper from Scott Field, and it's dated August 19th, 1941. And folks, this is not a facsimile, this is the real newspaper. And on behalf of the men and women of Scott Air Force Base, I'd like to ask our NCO Club Manager, Senior Master Sergeant Rick Ford, to come up here and accept this people and share this. And thank you very, very much.
In our perambulations around the nation over the past 15 years and reorganizing this phenomenon of enlisted pilots, we have come to learn that the current generation of NCOs is more than every bit as good as we expected it to be when we left it. And I am delighted and flattered that the organization has asked me to be part of the delightful conspiracy. Annie Proctor, where are you? I'm delighted for more than one reason. They've asked me to be a point man for this particular presentation, where one generation can embrace the next. Isn't that great? We have prepared a certificate of appreciation for Annie, expressing some of our sentiments about what Annie has done to raise the awareness of what we have done. It says, the Army Air Corps Enlisted Pilots Association presents a lifetime honorary membership to Annie M. Proctor in recognition of her outstanding contributions in preserving the enlisted pilot history, comprehensive news articles, and memorial ceremonies at St. Louis, Missouri, Scott Air Force Base, Illinois, signed by our President, Bill Albright. Here is a portable card you can carry with you to prove to your husband and whoever else. This is your event, and it's in the deepest kind of humility that we pass it on.
Well, Colonel Mitchell agreed in principle with our concept, but suggested we merge our project with a grand plan that he had to install a new space flagpole. At his direction, we went to the base design architects and into the construction contracting branch of our civil engineers. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Thank you.
There's always a lot of activity out at Scott Air Force Base. In this particular case, there was a special event coming up which we previewed and got a chance to talk with the people just before it happened. It was a celebration of a very specific kind of serviceman. We'll show you what we mean in take 4.
Scott Air Force Base in dedication to the memorial to former enlisted pilots and to airmen of all grades who have served their nation at Scott Air Force Base in the past, are serving today, and will serve in the future. Overhead at 10,000 feet is an Army helicopter assigned to the 102nd Army Aviation Unit. The aircraft contains 2 pararescue assigned to headquarters Military Air Command, which is located here at Scott Air Force Base. The pararescue men are accomplishing their last-minute equipment checks prior to exiting from the aircraft. These parachutes routinely deploy as high as 35,000 feet. They free fall for over 3 minutes and reach speeds of 120 miles per hour. On such deployments, they utilize special oxygen equipment. Today, their free fall will last about 46 seconds, and they will wear smoke so you can monitor their fall. 375th Airman Pilots Wing, and our host, Colonel Bob Evans. Sir. I took this opportunity to welcome all the distinguished guests and visitors that are here. Probably be here the rest of the afternoon, so let me just simply say to all of you, to your members of the 375th, your members of Scott Air Force Base, whether you're part of the community of Belleville and the surrounding areas, and whether you are senior enlisted pilots, we're proud and honored that all of you are here to share this momentous occasion, a momentous day with us. It's a privilege for me to be here today to represent Scott Air Force Base, the dedication of this memorial to our enlisted pilots, to those who represented the forerunners of today's United States Air Force, the Army Air Corps. It's fitting that this memorial should be dedicated here at Scott, the only Air Force base named for an enlisted man, Corporal Frank S. Scott, the first enlisted man to give his life for his country in a military aircraft in September of 1912. Scott's tradition is almost as long as that of the enlisted pilots. First received his wings in 1912, just 5 years before Scott Field was established. Scott and the enlisted pilots grew up together. They have served together, and they will now be together forever in the semblance of this memorial. The foresight and the work of some very dedicated people brought this memorial to fruition. I could name them, but again, it would take far longer than we have today. This memorial, this new base flagpole, are being dedicated today to all who have served faithfully at Scott throughout its 72-year history. Their service to our nation has been deep and lasting. That service continues with those of us here today and will continue, hopefully, to future generations of airmen and airwomen to come. This memorial will join many others here at Scott. Monuments which honor the duty and sacrifice of Corporal Scott, all airlifters of all times, all rescue people, and many others. Scott is an old and proud base. It is also a vitally important base in our nation's defense. 3 major commands, joint service personnel, worldwide responsibilities. We'll be here for a long time to come, hopefully in peace. Because of Scott's role, many distinguished visitors will arrive here as they do today and each day forever. So it is also fitting that this monument is strategically located along the Avenue of the Airlifters and representative of what all of us stand here who wear our blue suit. The enlisted pilots, especially in World War II, are the forerunners of the Military Airlift Command. For many of them shared around the world in the establishment and the formation and as pilots within the Air Transport Command and other forerunners of what today stands the Military Airlift Command. They pioneered air routes around the world. We still fly them today. These courageous sergeants seated to my left fought and died in all theaters of war and all types of aircraft. Many went on to positions of command, some to colonel rank, some to general officer rank, all to serve their country in professionalism and dedication. To list all of their accomplishments today and honors is not possible. And this monument, this memorial, pales in comparison with their valor, their contributions, their exploits. But it is an important reminder that to us of their service, always, for all times. Their role had been somewhat placed on the back burner of military history, as is so much of our tradition, and the reason those of us in the 375th today celebrate a Heritage Week and a few Heritage Days is to look back at our past, to look back at our heritage. Their heritage, their tradition have been lost. And yet in 1982, recognizing that they have made a contribution that should be recognized by all, they brought together a new organization. That organization continues to be together to share their contributions, their love for their country. And so today we share and attribute to them.
took much courage and a lot of lives to build air power. Her story terms no technological advance has progressed so far, so fast as that of aviation. The first flight was in 1903. We were on the moon 66 years later. And the people who made it happen had to risk their lives while on the leading edge of technology and human endurance. As I said at last night's banquet in honor of these, our enlisted pilots, I think it all stems from tradition. Our history, our heritage is a part of our tradition, and it is a part of what makes America and our land great. It is our base upon which we build. What we are today is in part what we were then. It would be foolish to ignore the past, and memorials like the one we dedicate today will help us to remember our tradition, to remember our heritage, to remember that and the sacrifices that have made us a free land. We dare not drop that mantle of freedom, handed to us at such high cost by those who have gone before. A trip to Washington, D.C. and show the uplifting value of memorials, those built by our nation in our nation's capital, where some of our nation's best are there. And it's not possible to visit Washington and not come away with a sense of awe, with a sense of recognition of the heritage of the freedom that our nation shares. Though the memorial here is not of that grandeur and that scale, it is no less important, no less of a contribution to the sharing of our values, a sharing of our pride, a sharing of the professionalism of the men and women who live and work here at Scott Air Force Base. So, let me again simply say to you, we're proud that you are here to share with us today. I'm proud that I was here to be able to share as a part of our history, the history of the 375th, the history of Scott Air Force Base. It has already been a wonderful day. There were a lot of doomsayers that said it was going to be 100 degrees today or 95 degrees, and I don't think we could have asked for better weather, more beautiful spring-like day here at the beginning of summer. But today is a wonderful day, a day of memory, a day of history, a day of pride. We all can share it. I'm glad that you and I have been able to share this together. Thank you for being a part of this dedication, a part of Scott's continuing history. Chase flag. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Chief's flight. Ready? Hey! Parade. Hey! Ladies and gentlemen, if you will look to your right or to the east of the parade field, soon you will see the approach of the aircraft assigned to Scott Air Force Base and flown by the 375th Air Medical Airlift Wing. The lead aircraft will be a C-12F King Air, flown by Captain Henry Smiley and Major Mike Barnes. Next is C-21 third jet, flown by Major Chuck Ball and Lieutenant Joe King. The third airplane should be a C-9 Nightingale, flown by Major Bill Owens and Major John Kramer. Fourth in line should be a T-39 Sabre jet, flown by Lieutenant Colonel Jim Smith and Major Dave Jones. Last in the formation will be a C-140, flown by Captain Bill Geiser and Captain Glenn Rochelle. They're in sight, ladies and gentlemen, off to the east. The aircraft of the 375th Air Medical Airlift Wing. Unveiling of Plaque. We're here dedicated today. I'd ask Colonel Mitchell, Commander of the 375th Air Medical Wing, to come and assist me. Mr. McMillan, the co-founder of the Enlisted Pilots Association. Mr. Arbon, co-founder of the Enlisted Pilots Association. Chief Stu Carter, the president of the MAC Chiefs Group. Come forward, please, and give me a hand. We'll unveil this plaque. To introduce to you the immediate past president of the Enlisted Pilots Association, Mr. Bob Creek. Sir? Colonel Mitchell, Chief Master Sergeant Messenger, it's beautiful. Honored guests, members of Scott Air Force Base. On behalf of my comrades, brothers, seated here, and their wives and their guests, I would like to thank you and your groups for this privilege to participate in this service. I would like to thank personally Helen Sweet and his wife Helen for the efforts they have put in to see that this event has finally taken place. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much on behalf of this entire.
the Chinook Band will play the Air Force song. Please rise. Okay, thank you very much. I want to thank the Chinook Band for being here today and adding so much to this occasion. Our old Mac Band was busy out of town and couldn't support us today, and we're really indebted to the Chinook folks for helping us out. Autograph. Chief's Point. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Thank you very, very much for attending.
sound of planes is a common sound when you're in this Metro East area, partly because of Scott Air Force Base. And we're at Scott right now to talk about some of the people who, in the past, flew some of these planes. I'm standing here with Chief Master Sergeant Charles Tresser. Chief, you're involved in an organization here at Scott that is specifically interested in recognizing some of these former pilots. Tell us a little about that.
Yes, I am with the MAC Chiefs Group, and the MAC Chiefs Group put together the idea to sponsor a plaque, a memento, dedication memorial to the enlisted pilots. We've done
That's the official title of this group, the Enlisted Pilots.
That's correct.
Okay.
We've done this in conjunction with a planned base flagpole that our wing commander had in the works. And so we have dedicated this memorial to the enlisted pilots. We've had about 100 former enlisted pilots come to Scott and participate in this dedication ceremony.
Okay. Now, the Enlisted Pilots is a group in and of itself. And what does that refer to? Who are these enlisted pilots?
They were, in fact, Air Force pilots in the Army Air Corps. During World War II, the need was so severe for pilots that they asked some enlisted people to fly airplanes. And we had about 3,000 enlisted folks that became staff sergeant pilots. Now, they all became commissioned pilots later on or separated from the service. And so the Enlisted Pilots Association, if you will, is a diminishing breed. And we wanted to make certain that we had some reference to our heritage, and the enlisted pilots could be remembered in the future. So we're very proud of this dedication ceremony.
Actually, it's a breed that won't continue because there aren't any more current enlisted pilots. Back sometime in the 40s, I guess, all pilots became commissioned, even the enlisted pilots at that point.
That's correct.
So now these people were a very special group of people. They date back, I think you told me earlier, even some of them predated World War II. There were enlisted pilots flying before then.
There were in the sister services
Yeah.
and in the Army, yes, that's correct.
And this plaque is kind of a memorial to those folks. And how many that were involved during World War II who were...
There were about 3,000 in the Army Air Corps.
And they formed an organization.
They formed an organization in 1982 to kind of get together and search for the enlisted pilots, and two people did that, and Mr. Leonard Sweet's here today, and he'll be able to elaborate more on the Enlisted Pilots organization.
Okay. Well, we ought to take just a moment and see if we can't talk to one of these enlisted pilots and get the inside dope on what it was like and what it's like now. Take 5. Leonard Sweet is a member of the Enlisted Pilots Association and lives in Lebanon, Illinois. Leonard, you were a pilot back in World War II. Did you serve at Scott Air Force Base?
Yes, I was stationed here in 1941 as a radio operator student in the radio school. And just as I graduated from the school, I had completed all my tests and was called for pilot training under the enlisted pilot program. That was started because they needed more pilots, and they didn't have enough applicants with college degree at that time, and so they took some enlisted men and put us through flying school.
Do you remember that experience at all?
Oh, yes, I remember it very well.
How long did you fly?
Well, I flew, our training was 7 months, and I got my wings in November of 1942, and I was in the last class that graduated as sergeant pilots. After our class, they made them all flight officers, which was a separate rank that they had for ones that started as enlisted pilots but still didn't have the college degree.
And did you, I think you told me you ultimately did get a commission.
Oh, yes, yes. Just about all of us eventually got commissioned. We were made flight officers, and then later got, well, I got what was called a battlefield commission while I was flying with the 8th Air Force in England.
Okay. Did you fly? You flew during World War II.
Yes.
How about after that?
I got out right after the war for a couple of years, but then I got recalled for the Berlin airlift. And I flew 176 trips into Berlin in C-54.
Really? That must have been an exciting time also.
It was.
When you were flying that airlift, you know, a lot of people were alive and wondering about it and weren't directly involved in it. How did that compare to combat missions?
Well, we didn't have anybody shooting at us, but...
That was the good news, right?
But we did fly in all kinds of weather, in some of the worst weather that I've ever flown in my life, because they kept planes going into Berlin every 3 minutes, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. So.
Was that the last time that you actually piloted a plane?
No, I flew for about 4 more years after that. I flew in B-36s for about a year. Then I came back here to Scott as a communications officer's course, took that course. And I flew in North Africa and in the Mediterranean in air-sea rescue in amphibious planes. And then I got out again for a couple of years, and I re-enlisted and stayed enlisted from then until I retired in 1970.
How long have you been living here in Lebanon?
About 10 years now. My wife came from Lebanon originally. I met her while I was stationed here in 1941. And still the same wife.
Really? Is that a record? I'm not sure.
So I worked for the Social Security Administration for about 9 years after I retired. And then after I stopped working for them, we came back up here, and we've been living here in Lebanon ever since.
So you've been working on this memorial along with Chief Tresser.
Oh, yes, yeah. We've been working on this, and I'm real proud of it, and real proud of everything that the bases and the Chiefs group has done for us, because they have been really fantastic.
Well, as you can see, a very important and proud moment for people who were involved as enlisted pilots back in World War II and are being memorialized at Scott Air Force Base. 5.
Leave your worries, leave them on the doorstep. Life's sweet. Just direct your feet to the sunny side of the street. Hop bottles, laugh, pitter pat. You know that happy tune is my step. Life's all right if you dig that beat on the sunny side of the street. Used to walk in the shade with my blues on parade. What a crack! in the shade. Get hip, don't be afraid. Move it on over, kill yourself in the clover. Only hit for a cent, who cares? Rich as Rockefeller, can't be beat. Blow dust round my feet on the sunny, sunny side of the street.
Self, their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, make skies. Be nobleness and ever again divine. And you know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies.
On Saturday morning, the day after the dedication ceremony, my wife and daughter and I went back out to the parade ground to take another look at the memorial plaque. When we got there, there was another brother there with his wife, and we started talking back and forth. And I told him that I hoped that everyone had enjoyed that 2 days there. He looked at me very seriously and said, well, if they didn't, they'll never be satisfied with heaven.
You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned our good. Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea